Sometimes the people who change your life arrive 5 seconds before everything falls apart. The autumn air smelled like caramel popcorn and wet leaves as the community fair glowed beneath strings of golden lights in a small town just outside Providence. Children ran between game booths carrying oversized stuffed animals. Parents laughed beside food trucks. A local band played old rock songs from a temporary stage near the center of the park. To everyone else, it looked like an ordinary Friday night. Chloe Richardson had spent the evening helping organize activities for families from the elementary school where she worked as a counselor. By a little after 7, her feet ached and her paper cup of coffee had gone cold. She stood near the edge of the fairgrounds, watching the Ferris wheel turn slowly against the darkening sky. The lights reflected across her face in shifting colors: blue, red, gold. For the first time all week, she felt relaxed. Then she noticed the little girl. The child couldn't have been older than 8. Pale skin, a denim jacket slightly too large for her small frame. She stood alone beside a closed ticket booth near the far end of the fairgrounds. Not crying, not calling for anyone. Just watching the crowd with a strange kind of focus that didn't belong on a child's face. Chloe frowned. Most children lost in public looked confused. This girl looked alert, careful, as if she expected something bad to happen. Chloe started walking toward her. The sounds of the fair faded behind her as she crossed the gravel path. "Hey there," she called parents. The girl looked up, green eyes, unusually bright beneath the carnival lights. For a second she seemed ready to run. Then something changed. Maybe it was Chloe's voice, maybe it was exhaustion. Whatever it was, the girl's shoulders relaxed slightly. "I'm okay," she said quickly. Too quickly. Chloe recognized the tone immediately. She heard it from children all the time. The voice people used when they were definitely not okay. The girl hesitated. "Sophia. Nice to meet you, Sophia." Chloe smiled. "I'm Chloe." The child nodded but kept looking over Chloe's shoulder toward the crowd. Not at the rides, not at the games, at the people. A chill moved down Chloe's spine. "Are you lost?" she asked quietly. Sophia shook her head. "No." "Then where's your family?" The little girl's gaze dropped to the ground. For a moment she looked exactly her age. Small, tired, frightened. Before she could answer, something changed in the atmosphere around them. Chloe couldn't explain it. It wasn't a sound, it wasn't a sight, it was a feeling. Like the entire fair had suddenly taken a breath and forgotten how to exhale. Conversations slowed, heads turned. Somewhere across the midway, a loud crash echoed through the night. People stopped moving, then movement exploded everywhere at once. Adults hurried toward exits. Children grabbed their parents' hands. Confusion spread through the crowd like ripples across water. Chloe immediately dropped into counselor mode. Calm first, questions later. She crouched beside Sophia. "Stay with me." The girl's eyes widened. She didn't ask why. She didn't argue. She simply nodded. That frightened Chloe more than anything. Children weren't supposed to understand danger that quickly. Another sharp sound echoed in the distance. The Ferris wheel stopped turning. Music from the stage cut off abruptly. The bright fairground suddenly felt much darker than it had moments earlier. Chloe took Sophia's hand. It was ice cold. "Come on." They moved away from the center of the fair toward a service road behind the event grounds. Strings of lights disappeared behind rows of storage trailers and equipment tents. The noise of the crowd became muffled. Sophia kept looking behind them. "Don't," Chloe said softly. "You're safe." For several seconds, neither of them spoke. Finally, Sophia looked up. "You don't know that." Chloe's heart skipped. "What do you mean?" Sophia opened her mouth, closed it again. Then she glanced toward the darkness beyond the fairgrounds, somewhere beyond the lights, beyond the noise, beyond everything normal. What Chloe didn't know was that less than a mile away, dozens of people were already searching for the missing child. Some were desperate to protect her. Others had very different reasons for finding her first. Sophia squeezed Chloe's hand tighter. Her voice barely rose above a whisper. "They're coming back." And for the first time that night, Chloe realized this little girl hadn't been lost at all. She had been hiding. The service road behind the fairgrounds felt like a different world. The music was gone. The laughter was gone. Even the bright carnival lights seemed distant now, reduced to faint colors flickering through rows of equipment trailers and storage containers. Chloe guided Sophia along a narrow gravel path behind an old maintenance building. The little girl's hand remained locked around hers. Neither of them spoke for almost a minute. The silence felt heavier than the noise they had left behind. Finally, Chloe glanced down. "What do you mean they are coming back?" Sophia kept walking. Her small sneakers scraped softly against the gravel. "They were already looking for me." Chloe slowed. Who? The girl shook her head. I do not know all their names. That answer sent another chill through Chloe's chest. Most children would have said strangers. Bad guys. Something simple. Sophia answered like someone used to hearing adult conversations she was not supposed to hear. Ahead of them stood an old brick church near the edge of town. It had been closed for renovations for months. Chloe remembered seeing construction signs every time she drove past. The basement entrance on the side of the building was partially hidden by scaffolding and stacks of materials. It was not perfect, but it was dry, private, and far from the crowds. Come on, Chloe said quietly. They slipped through a gap in the fencing and made their way down a short set of concrete steps. The basement smelled faintly of dust and old wood. Emergency lights cast a soft amber glow across unfinished walls. Chloe closed the door behind them and finally allowed herself to breathe. Sophia immediately moved toward a folding chair in the corner. She looked exhausted, the kind of exhaustion children were never supposed to wear on their faces. Chloe sat across from her. Sophia stared at the floor. I cannot. Why not? The little girl hesitated. Because my father told me never to tell strangers things that could get people hurt. Chloe almost smiled. Under normal circumstances, that would have sounded responsible. She leaned back against the wall. Fair enough. Sophia looked surprised. You are not angry? No. Chloe folded her arms. I work with children. Trust takes time. For the first time, the girl seemed to relax slightly. Outside, distant sirens echoed somewhere beyond town. Chloe checked her phone. No signal. The thick basement walls blocked almost everything. Great, she muttered. Sophia tilted her head. What? Nothing. Chloe slipped the phone back into her pocket, just hoping to call someone. Sophia lowered her eyes. You should not call anyone. Why? The child looked toward the basement door. Because if the wrong people find me first, bad things happen. Chloe studied her carefully. Every answer created more questions. At that exact moment, less than 10 miles away, a fleet of black vehicles moved through city streets under strict instructions. Search every route, search every camera feed, search every witness report. A missing child had turned an entire organization upside down. Unfortunately for Chloe, she had no idea how many people were already looking for the girl sitting across from her. Back in the basement, Sophia finally spoke again. My father is probably worried. The little girl nodded. He always worries. Then let us find him. Sophia looked up immediately. Fear flashed across her face. Real fear. No. Chloe frowned. No, not yet. Why? Sophia swallowed. Because somebody knew where I would be tonight. The words landed heavily between them. Chloe stared. What do you mean? I mean somebody told them. Her voice dropped lower. The route changed this morning. Only a few people knew. Chloe felt her pulse quicken. That was not a child's random guess. That sounded like something she had overheard, something she believed. Before Chloe could ask another question, a sound echoed faintly from outside. Tires, then doors closing. Both of them froze. The basement suddenly felt much smaller. Sophia's eyes widened. Chloe rose slowly and crossed toward the narrow window near the ceiling. She could only see a sliver of the parking lot through the darkness. A pair of headlights swept across the churchyard, then disappeared. Another vehicle followed, then another. Chloe stepped back from the window. Sophia was already standing. They found us, the girl whispered. Chloe's heart hammered. How could they? Sophia did not answer. She only looked toward the basement door. Then, for the first time since they met, she revealed the one detail that changed is Romano. And outside, more vehicles were arriving. Names have power. Sometimes they open doors. Sometimes they make every door in the city slam shut. Chloe stared at the little girl across the basement as the name settled into place. Romano. She had heard it before. Everyone in Rhode Island had. Not from personal experience, from whispers, news reports. Rumors passed between adults who lowered their voices when certain subjects came up. Sophia watched her carefully, waiting, measuring her reaction. You know it, the girl said softly. Chloe did not answer immediately. Outside, another vehicle rolled across the church parking lot. Headlights swept briefly across the narrow basement window before disappearing again. The room seemed colder than before. I have heard the name, Chloe finally admitted. Sophia lowered her eyes. Most people have. Chloe crossed back toward the folding chair and sat down. Her pulse was still racing, but panic would not help either of them. She worked with frightened children every day. If Sophia could stay calm, so could she. Tell me something, Chloe said gently. Are those people outside looking for you because they want to help you? The girl shook her head immediately. No. Then how do you know the people searching for you are not the same people who were searching before? Sophia hesitated. Because my father's people always find me first. The certainty in her voice was unsettling. It sounded less like confidence and more like experience. Chloe looked toward the ceiling. Somewhere above them, engines idled. Doors opened and closed. Muffled voices drifted through the night air. Nobody seemed to be entering the church yet. Your father must have security, Sophia nodded. A lot. Then why were you alone? The question seemed to hurt. The child pulled her oversized jacket tighter around herself. Chloe's immediately regretted asking. The answer carried enough sadness on its own. Silence returned. Outside, the wind pushed against the church walls. The old building creaked softly. For several moments, neither of them moved. Then Sophia looked up again. Chloe almost laughed. The honesty of the question caught her off guard. Yes, she admitted. Sophia considered that. Me too. Somehow that answer made Chloe feel better. Fear shared was easier to carry than fear hidden. Less than 10 miles away, the upper floors overlooking the province skyline remained fully lit, despite the late hour. Phones rang constantly. Computer screens displayed maps, traffic cameras, and search grids. Men and women moved quickly between offices. Nobody looked tired, nobody looked relaxed. At the center of it all stood the man staring at a wall of surveillance footage. Gabriel Romano had not sat down in nearly 3 hours. His white dress shirt sleeves were rolled to his forearms. His tie was gone. His attention remained fixed on dozens of camera feeds playing simultaneously. Every passing second without news tightened the atmosphere around him. Nobody dared interrupt unless absolutely necessary. A security specialist stepped forward. We found another angle from the fair. Gabriel turned. The room instantly became quieter. A new video appeared on the screen. Grainy, distant, difficult to see, but clear enough. A young woman moving through the crowd. Gabriel stepped closer. The footage froze. Sophia's face appeared beneath carnival lights. Safe, alive. Relief flickered across his expression so briefly that most people would have missed it. Then his attention shifted to the woman holding her hand. Who is she? He asked. Nobody had the answer. Back at the church, Chloe checked her phone again. One bar of signal appeared for less than a second before vanishing. She sighed. Come on. Sophia looked up. Where are we going? We cannot stay here forever. The child did not argue. Together they climbed the basement stairs and stopped beside the exit door. Chloe pressed her ear against the wood. Nothing. No voices, no footsteps. Just wind. Slowly she opened the door a few inches. The churchyard sat empty beneath yellow streetlights. No vehicles, no people, nothing. Her confusion deepened. She could have sworn somebody had arrived. Then she noticed the glow coming from across the street. A television inside a convenience store window. The late-night news broadcast was playing. A red banner stretched across the bottom of the screen. Missing shield. Chloe stepped closer. Sophia followed. The image changed. A photograph appeared. Dark hair. Green eyes. Denim jacket. Chloe felt the air leave her lungs. The entire city was looking for Sophia Romano. But the next image was the one that froze both of them in place. A photograph of the man leading the search, tall, sharp features, controlled expression. Powerful enough that even a still image seemed intimidating. Sophia stared at the screen. Chloe stared at Sophia. Then the little girl whispered 3 words that changed everything. That is my father. Some people carried power like a title. Others carried it like a storm. Chloe could not look away from the television screen. The image of Gabriel Romano remained frozen beneath the bright red banner as reporters discussed search efforts spreading across the state. Even through a television broadcast, there was something unsettling about him. Not because he looked cruel, because he looked focused, the kind of focus that made people move mountains. Sophia stood beside her with both hands wrapped around the sleeves of her oversized jacket. The little girl did not seem surprised by the attention. If anything, she looked tired of it. Your father owns all of this? Chloe asked quietly. Sophia shook her head. No, then why is everyone looking for you? The child stared at the screen for a moment. Because I am all he has left. The answer lingered between them. Chloe looked down at her. For the first time since they met, she stopped seeing a mystery and started seeing a child. One carrying burdens no 8-year-old should understand. The convenience store clerk stepped closer to the television and increased the volume. New images appeared. Search teams, security footage, traffic cameras. Every channel seemed to be discussing the same story. Missing daughter of business leader Gabriel Romano. The wording caught Chloe's attention. Business leader. Not anything dramatic, just business leader. The gap between rumors and reality suddenly felt much larger than she expected. "We should go," Chloe said. Sophia nodded immediately. They left the churchyard and followed quiet residential street lined with old maple trees. Most houses were dark. Porch lights glowed softly against the autumn night. Fallen leaves drifted across the sidewalks whenever the wind picked up. For several blocks, neither of them spoke. Then Sophia finally broke the silence. "You are different." Chloe glanced down. "Different from who?" "Most people." "How?" Sophia thought for a moment. "Most people get nervous when they hear my last name." Chloe almost smiled. "Maybe I am nervous, not the same way." The child's answer carried surprising certainty. Chloe wondered how many adults Sophia spent time observing. Probably too many. Somewhere across the city, Gabriel Romano stood alone in a glass-walled office overlooking the Providence skyline, the lights of downtown reflected against the windows behind him. A tablet rested on the desk in front of him. The paused surveillance image remained visible. Chloe holding Sophia's hand beneath carnival lights. The image had already been enhanced, enlarged, and distributed to multiple teams, yet nobody knew her name. Nobody knew where she had gone. Gabriel studied the picture carefully. Most people focused on the missing child. His attention remained fixed on the woman beside her. Sophia looked calm, not frightened, not crying, safe. The distinction mattered. "Run facial recognition again," he instructed without looking away from the screen. A security specialist hesitated. "We already did." Gabriel finally turned. "Then do it better." Minutes later, the room returned to silence. Back on the street, Chloe led Sophia toward a 24-hour diner tucked between a gas station and a pharmacy. Neon lights reflected across rain-speckled windows. The smell of coffee drifted through the entrance every time the door opened. It was warm, public, safe, at least safer than wandering outside. They slid into a booth near the back. A waitress brought hot chocolate for Sophia and coffee for Chloe. Neither touched their drinks immediately. Chloe watched the child stare at the steam rising from the mug. "When did you last eat?" Sophia looked embarrassed. "Lunch." Chloe pushed a basket of fries toward her. "That was hours ago." The little girl finally smiled. It transformed her face completely. For a brief moment, she looked like an ordinary second grader instead of somebody hiding from half the state. Across the restaurant, a television mounted above the counter continued broadcasting updates. Chloe tried to ignore it. She failed. Every few minutes, another report appeared, another discussion, another image. The search was growing. Then a new photograph flashed onto the screen. This one was not Gabriel. It was Sophia younger, standing beside a Christmas tree, laughing. Chloe noticed the girl's expression immediately, the sadness, the way her eyes dropped. "What is it?" she asked softly. Sophia stared at the photograph. "That was before." "Before what?" The child remained quiet for several seconds. "Before my mom died." Chloe felt her chest tighten. Suddenly many things made sense. The loneliness, the maturity, the way she watched the world. Children who experience loss often learn to grow up too fast. Before Chloe could respond, the bell above the diner's entrance chimed. The sound seemed ordinary, yet Sophia froze instantly. Every muscle in her body went rigid. Chloe turned toward the door. 3 men in dark jackets had just entered the restaurant. They were not causing trouble. They were not speaking loudly. They simply stepped inside and began scanning the room, and the moment Sophia saw them, all the color disappeared from her face. The difference between danger and safety is often a single decision made in less than a second. Chloe did not wait to find out why Sophia had gone pale. The little girl's reaction was enough. She slid out of the booth and reached for Sophia's hand beneath the table. "Back door?" she asked quietly. Sophia nodded immediately. Neither of them looked toward the 3 men near the entrance again. Chloe dropped a few bills beside the untouched coffee and guided Sophia toward a narrow hallway marked restrooms. The sounds of dishes and conversations continued behind them, ordinary, calm, yet every instinct told Chloe to keep moving. They passed the kitchen. A cook glanced up briefly before returning to the grill. Beyond a metal service door, cold night air rushed inside as Chloe pushed it open. The parking lot behind the diner sat mostly empty beneath pale security lights. A delivery truck occupied one corner. 2 employee vehicles occupied another. Chloe and Sophia hurried toward the alley that connected to the next street. Fallen leaves scraped across the pavement in the wind. Only when they reached the opposite sidewalk did Chloe finally slow down. "Did they see us?" she asked. Sophia looked back once. I'd answer was honest. That worried Chloe more than certainty would have. They continued walking through quiet residential blocks. The town seemed asleep now. Porch lights glowed softly. Television screens flickered behind curtains. Somewhere a dog barked. Somewhere else a train horn echoed across the distance. Eventually Sophia spoke. "I am sorry." Chloe looked down. "For what?" "Because you keep getting pulled into this." The apology sounded strangely adult coming from an 8-year-old. Chloe squeezed her shoulder gently. None of this is your fault. Sophia lowered her eyes. Dad always says that too. For the first time, Chloe heard something warm attached to the mention of Gabriel Romano. Not fear, not power, just family. Less than 30 minutes later, several miles away, Gabriel stood in the operations room as another report arrived. A security analyst hurried forward holding a tablet. We found her. Every conversation stopped instantly. Gabriel turned. The image on the screen showed diner security footage captured only minutes earlier. Sophia sitting in a booth, Chloe beside her, safe, alive. Relief swept through the room. Gabriel's expression barely changed, but everyone present noticed the difference. The pressure in the air eased by a fraction, then the analyst enlarged another frame. 3 men entering through the front door. Gabriel's eyes narrowed. Who are they? Another specialist answered immediately. Not ours. Silence followed. Gabriel looked back at the image of Chloe. She was already standing, moving Sophia away, fast, deliberate, protective. She got the child out before they reached the table, the analyst said. Gabriel continued studying the screen. Find her name. We are trying. Try harder. Back on the street, Chloe finally made a decision. Wandering all night was impossible. Sophia needed sleep, food, stability. They need a place to stop. Her apartment was 20 minutes away by car. Normally she would never bring a stranger home. Tonight nothing felt normal. By the time they arrived, midnight had passed. Chloe lived in a modest second-floor apartment above a bookstore. The building was old but clean. Warm yellow light filled the stairwell. Sophia paused halfway up the stairs and looked around carefully. This is where you live, Chloe smiled. Not very exciting. It feels nice. The answer surprised her. Inside looked exactly as it always did. Bookshelves, framed photographs, a worn couch. A small kitchen with dishes drying beside the sink. Ordinary. Sophia stepped inside cautiously. Then her shoulders relaxed for what felt like the first time all night. Chloe found extra blankets and made up the couch. Sophia sat quietly while watching every movement. The child seemed fascinated by simple things. Family photos, a stack of school papers waiting to be graded. Things most people stopped noticing years ago. You can sleep here, Chloe said. Sophia nodded. Thank you. Chloe turned off most of the lights. Only a lamp near the window remained glowing softly. Outside, rain began tapping against the glass. The apartment settled into silence. For several minutes neither spoke. Then Sophia's small voice broke the darkness. Why are you helping me? Chloe looked over from the armchair. The question deserved honesty. Because somebody should. Sophia stared at her for a long moment. Then she curled beneath the blanket and finally closed her eyes. Within minutes she was asleep. Chloe remained awake beside the window, wondering how her life had changed so completely in a single evening. Her phone rested on the table beside her, silent for hours. Suddenly the screen lit up. One unknown number. No caller ID, just a single incoming call. And for reasons she could not explain, Chloe knew answering it might change everything. The call rang 3 times before Chloe finally answered. Rain tapped softly against the apartment window while the glow from the lamp cast long shadows across the living room. Sophia remained asleep beneath the blanket on the couch, one small hand resting against her cheek. For a moment, Chloe considered hanging up. Instead, she lifted the phone to her ear. Hello, silence answered first, then a man's voice, calm, controlled, low enough that she almost missed the exhaustion hidden beneath it. Is Sophia with you? Chloe froze. Every muscle in her body tightened. Her eyes immediately moved toward the sleeping child. Who is this? Another brief pause. My name is Gabriel Romano. The room suddenly felt much smaller. Chloe stood slowly and stepped into the kitchen. She lowered her voice. How did you get this number? Because finding people is what my team does. The answer should have sounded threatening. Somehow it did not. It sounded factual, like somebody stating the weather. Chloe looked through the rain-covered window toward the dark street below. How do I know you are really her father? She asked. Gabriel answered immediately. She sleeps with a stuffed rabbit named Oliver. She hides vegetables inside napkins when she thinks nobody is watching. She still leaves a light on every night because she has not liked sleeping in the dark since her mother passed away. Chloe said nothing. Every detail matched the child sleeping 10 feet away. On the other end of the line, Gabriel's voice softened slightly. Is she safe? It was the first time Chloe heard emotion break through the control. Not fear, not panic, relief waiting for permission to exist. Chloe looked back toward the couch. She is safe. The silence that followed lasted only a few seconds, but it felt much longer. Somewhere hundreds of miles of tension seemed to release at once. Thank you, Gabriel said quietly. Chloe had expected many things. Gratitude was not one of them. "What exactly is happening?" she asked. Gabriel did not answer immediately. "That conversation is better in person." Chloe frowned. "I am not bringing her anywhere until I understand what is going on." A faint sound on the line suggested the beginning of a smile. "You are more stubborn than most people who meet me." "Maybe." Another pause. Then Gabriel spoke again. "Look outside." Chloe's stomach dropped. She moved toward the window. Across the street, a black SUV sat parked beneath a street lamp. Not moving, not hiding, just waiting. Rain glistened across the windshield. Her pulse quickened. "How long has that been there?" she asked. 23 minutes. Chloe stared. "You have people watching my apartment?" "Protecting it. That depends on your definition." For the first time, Gabriel actually laughed. The sound surprised her. It was brief, genuine. Completely different from the image she had built from television broadcasts and rumors. "Fair point," he admitted. Back in the living room, Sophia stirred beneath the blanket. Chloe glanced over. The little girl slowly opened her eyes. For a moment she looked confused. Then she saw the phone. She sat upright immediately. "Is it him?" she whispered. Chloe hesitated, then handed her the phone. Sophia pressed it against her ear. "Dad?" Everything else disappeared. The rain, the apartment, the city beyond the window. Chloe could only watch as the child's entire expression changed. The tension she had carried since the fair seemed to melt away. Sophia smiled, then laughed softly, then wiped at her eyes before pretending she was not. Chloe turned away and gave her privacy. Several minutes later the call ended. Sophia held the phone carefully before returning it. "He is coming." Chloe nodded. The little girl looked down. "You are not leaving, right?" The question caught her off guard. "What do you mean?" Sophia hesitated. "I know everybody always talks to him, but nobody ever talks to me first." Chloe felt something tighten inside her chest. Before she could answer, headlights appeared outside. A vehicle turned onto the street below. Then another. Rain reflected across black paint and tinted glass. The convoy moved slowly, deliberately, no sirens, no chaos, just quiet certainty. Sophia moved toward the window. Chloe joined her. Together they watched as the lead SUV stopped directly in front of the building. The driver's door opened. A tall figure stepped out beneath the rain. Even from half a block away, there was no mistaking who it was. Gabriel Romano had arrived, but as Chloe watched him cross the sidewalk toward the entrance, something else caught her attention. Across the street, beyond the parked vehicles, another car sat motionless beneath the darkness. Its lights were off, its engine was running, and whoever occupied it appeared to be watching the exact same building. The people who fear losing something rarely reveal how much it matters until the moment they get it back. Rain shimmered beneath the streetlights as Gabriel Romano stepped through the front entrance of the building. Chloe could hear distant footsteps echoing up the stairwell. Unhurried, certain Sophia was already moving toward the apartment door before Chloe gently touched her shoulder. "Wait." The little girl nodded, but barely. Every second seemed to stretch longer than the one before it. Then came a knock, not loud, not demanding, just 3 calm taps against the wood. Chloe opened the door. For a moment neither spoke. Gabriel Romano stood several feet away in the hallway. Taller than she expected. Dark hair damp from the rain, a charcoal overcoat over white dress shirt. The television cameras had never captured the exhaustion in his eyes. He looked less like a powerful public figure and more like a father who had not slept all night. Then Sophia ran past Chloe. Gabriel dropped to one knee immediately. The reunion was quiet. No dramatic speeches, no tears. Just a father wrapping his arms around his daughter and holding her as though the rest of the world had disappeared. Chloe looked away, suddenly feeling like she was witnessing something private. "I am okay," Sophia whispered. Gabriel closed his eyes briefly. "I know." For several seconds neither moved. Eventually Sophia stepped back and looked up at him. "I told you she helped me." Gabriel's attention shifted toward Chloe. The expression on his face softened. Chloe folded her arms. "I just made sure she stayed safe." Most people would have walked away. His answer carried enough sincerity that she did not know how to respond. A few minutes later they sat around the small kitchen table. Rain continued tapping softly against the windows. Sophia worked on a mug of hot chocolate while Gabriel and Chloe spoke quietly. For the first time, Chloe could ask questions directly. "What exactly happened tonight?" Gabriel's expression darkened slightly. Not with anger, with concern. He looked towards Sophia before answering. "The attack at the fair was never random." Chloe leaned forward. "Then what was it?" Gabriel exchanged a brief glance with one of the security specialists waiting near the doorway. The man handed him a tablet. Gabriel placed it on the table and turned the screen toward her. Security photographs appeared. Maps, vehicle routes. timelines. Chloe frowned as she studied them. This was planned. Yes, Gabriel nodded. Very careful mug. The room suddenly felt quieter. Gabriel continued. At first we believed the goal was simple chaos. A distraction. He tapped the screen. We were wrong. Chloe followed the lines connecting various locations, vehicles, communications, movement patterns. Even without understanding everything, she could tell someone had spent months preparing. Then what was the real objective? She asked. Gabriel's jaw tightened. For a brief moment something cold appeared behind his eyes. Not cruelty, calculation, the kind people developed after surviving difficult lessons. They never intended to hurt Sophia. Chloe blinked. What? They needed her alive. Silence settled across the room. Even Soviel exhaled slowly. Whoever organized this operation wanted leverage. Chloe stared at the screen. Suddenly pieces began falling into place. The careful planning, the route changes, the coordinated movements. None of it matched random violence. It matched a strategy. You think they wanted to take her? Gabriel nodded once. I know they did. The realization sent a chill through Chloe. Somehow that felt worse, more personal, more deliberate. Across the apartment, one of Gabriel's phones vibrated. The security specialist checked the screen. His expression changed instantly. Sir. Gabriel looked up. What? The man handed over the device. Chloe watched as Gabriel read the message. For the first time since arriving, genuine surprise crossed his face. What is it? She asked. Gabriel remained silent for several seconds. Then he turned the screen toward her. Financial records, missing accounts, large unexplained transfers. Numbers she could barely comprehend. We just found something connected to tonight, he said quietly. Chloe frowned. Connected how? Gabriel looked back at the data. The answer seemed to disturb him more than anything they had discussed so far. Because somebody did not risk all of this for revenge. He lifted his eyes toward her. They did it for money. A man who had spent months hiding behind loyalty realized the first crack in his plan had finally appeared. Money leaves fingerprints even when the people behind it think they have erased every trace. The apartment felt different after the discovery. The warmth that had filled the kitchen only minutes earlier gave way to something colder, more serious. Gabriel sat at the table studying the financial reports while rain continued sliding down the windows. Sophia had fallen asleep again on the couch, exhausted by the longest day of her life. Chloe watched Gabriel read page after page without speaking. The numbers clearly meant something to him, something significant. How much is missing? She finally asked. Gabriel looked up. Enough, that is not an answer. A faint smile touched the corner of his mouth. Several $1 million moved through accounts that should not exist. Chloe blinked. The number sounded unreal. Gabriel slid the tablet across the table. Charts filled the screen, transfers, dates, account numbers. Most of it looked like another language. You can tell all of this is connected, she asked. The timing matches. He pointed toward a series of transactions. These began almost a year ago. And nobody noticed? Gabriel leaned back in his chair. Someone made sure nobody noticed. The answer lingered heavily between them. Chloe understood what he was implying. This was not an outside problem. This was someone close enough to manipulate information from within. Someone trusted. Across the room, one of Gabriel's security specialists received a message through an earpiece. He immediately crossed the apartment and lowered his voice. Sir. Gabriel stood. The specialist handed him a phone. A few seconds later, Gabriel's expression hardened. What happened? Chloe asked. Gabriel lowered the device slowly. The executive responsible for monitoring these accounts disappeared 2 hours ago. Silence filled the kitchen. Chloe stared. Disappeared? His house is empty. His phone is gone. His vehicle was abandoned near the waterfront. Gabriel's eyes narrowed slightly. He left before we found the records. Chloe felt her stomach tighten. Whoever was behind this had already realized something was wrong. Less than 5 miles away, in an office building overlooking the harbor, lights remained on in a corner suite long after midnight. Computer monitors glowed blue against empty desks. A man moved quickly through the darkness collecting files and storage devices. His hands shook despite his efforts to remain calm. For months he had hidden behind spreadsheets, meetings and routine reports. Now every minute mattered. Unfortunately for him, the walls were already closing in. Back at the apartment, Gabriel moved toward the window. Below, the security vehicles remained parked along the street. Rain reflected across black roofs and windshields. Guards rotated positions with quiet efficiency. Nothing looked accidental. You expected something like this, did you not? Chloe asked. Gabriel remained silent for a moment. I expected someone inside my organization was helping, but not this. He shook his head. Not at this scale. The answer surprised her. For the first time she saw uncertainty. Not weakness, just honesty. Gabriel did not have all the answers. The realization made him seem more human than any television report ever had. What happens now? She asked. Gabriel looked towards Sophia, sleeping peacefully on the couch. His expression softened instantly. Now we find out who thought my daughter was worth more than their loyalty. The room fell quiet again. Minutes passed. Then Sophia shifted beneath her blanket. Without fully waking up, she murmured something softly. Gabriel crossed the room immediately. Chloe watched as he knelt beside the couch, just the blanket around her shoulder. The movement was automatic, familiar, protective. Sophia relaxed again almost instantly. Chloe looked away. Something about the moment felt unexpectedly personal. A father, a daughter, a life that existed beyond headlines and rumors. Gabriel returned to the table a few moments later. Before either of them could speak, another phone vibrated. This time it belonged to the lead security specialist. He checked the screen and frowned. "Sir, there is something else." Gabriel accepted the device. Chloe watched his eyes move across the message. Then, "What?" she asked. Gabriel turned the screen toward her. Security footage filled the display. A parking lot, a church, a diner. Multiple locations from earlier that night. "Someone followed us," she whispered. Gabriel nodded once. Not just followed. His voice dropped lower. Someone knew exactly where Sophia would go before she got there. And for the first time, Chloe realized the leak was even closer than they had feared. Trust is not built when everything goes right. It is built when people have every reason to walk away and choose to stay anyway. Dawn arrived slowly over Providence. The rain had finally stopped, leaving the city wrapped in pale grey light. Chloe woke to the smell of coffee and the unfamiliar realization that several security vehicles were still parked outside her building. For a few seconds, she forgot everything that had happened. Then she saw Sophia asleep on the couch and remembered all of it. The fare, the chase, Gabriel Romano, the missing money, the leak. She stepped into the kitchen. Gabriel stood beside the counter reading messages on a tablet while a cup of untouched coffee cooled beside him. He looked as though he had not slept at all. "Good morning," Chloe said. Gabriel glanced up. "Morning. You should probably sleep." A faint smile appeared. "That advice would be more convincing if you looked rested." Chloe almost laughed. The normal conversation felt strange after everything else. Across the room, Sophia stirred awake and immediately brightened when she saw both of them. Within half an hour, the atmosphere inside the apartment felt almost ordinary. Pancakes, coffee, morning sunlight filtering through the windows. For the first time since they met, Chloe saw Sophia acting like an actual child. She laughed when syrup dripped onto her sleeve. She argued about whether blueberries belonged in pancakes. She rolled her eyes when Gabriel reminded her to finish breakfast. The simple moments changed something. The terrifying headlines and security convoys faded into the background. Chloe found herself seeing a family instead of a mystery. Later that morning, Gabriel invited her to accompany them to a secure property outside the city. "You do not have to," he said. But Sophia asked. The little girl immediately nodded. "Please." Chloe hesitated. A sensible person would have declined. A sensible person would have returned to work and pretended none of this had happened. Yet when she looked at Sophia, the answer felt obvious. By noon they arrived at a large estate overlooking Narragansett Bay. The property was elegant without feeling extravagant. Stone pathways wound through carefully maintained gardens. Large oak trees shaded portions of the grounds. Security remained visible but discreet. What surprised Chloe most was how normal everything felt. Staff members greeted Sophia warmly. Gardeners waved. A cook appeared with fresh cookies before disappearing again. Nobody seemed afraid of Gabriel. They respected him. There was a difference. During lunch, Chloe found herself seated at a long dining table surrounded by several senior members of Gabriel's organization. Financial advisors, attorneys, executives, people who had worked alongside him for years. The atmosphere remained polite, but Chloe noticed something else. Everyone was watching everyone. Every smile seemed slightly forced. Every conversation carried hidden tension beneath it. The leak had changed everything. Nobody knew who to trust anymore. Gabriel remained calm throughout the meal. Observing more than speaking, listening more than questioning, Chloe recognized the same behavior she often saw in children who sensed conflict before adults admitted it existed. Across the table, Sophia quietly drew pictures while pretending not to pay attention. Halfway through lunch, one of Gabriel's advisors mentioned the missing executive. Another executive quickly changed the subject. The reaction lasted less than 2 seconds. Gabriel noticed. So did Chloe. The room grew quieter afterward. Later, while walking through the gardens, Chloe finally spoke. They are all suspicious of each other now, Gabriel. Do you know who it is? Not yet. He paused beside a stone fountain. Sunlight reflected across the water. But the circle keeps getting smaller. Chloe studied him carefully. And what happens when you find out? Gabriel looked toward the distant shoreline. Then I find out why loyalty suddenly became negotiable. The answer stayed with her for the rest of the afternoon. As evening approached, another report arrived. This one changed everything. Gabriel reviewed it in silence, then read it again. Chloe immediately recognized the expression on his face. Something was wrong. What happened? She asked. Gabriel slowly handed her the tablet. Security logs filled the screen, access records, internal communications, route schedules. Chloe scanned the information until one detail caught her attention. The leak did not originate from a random employee. It originated from someone who had attended family dinners, someone trusted enough to know Sophia's personal schedule, someone who had been inside this very house. Chloe looked up. Gabriel's expression had become unreadable. Across the lawn, several familiar faces from lunch continued their conversations, completely unaware of the new information. And for the first time, Chloe realized the person who betrayed them might have been sitting at the same table only hours earlier. The hardest choices rarely arrive with certainty. They arrive disguised as loyalty. Evening settled over Narragansett Bay in shades of silver and blue. The estate looked peaceful from the outside. Lights glowed warmly through tall windows. Waves rolled quietly against the distant shoreline, yet beneath the calm surface tension spread through every hallway and office. Someone close to the Romano family had betrayed them. Nobody knew who. Chloe stood on a balcony overlooking the water while cool ocean air moved through the gardens below. She could still hear Sophia laughing somewhere inside the house. The sound felt important, a reminder of what everyone was trying to protect. Behind her, the balcony door opened softly. Gabriel stepped outside carrying 2 cups of coffee. He handed one to her without speaking. For several moments they stood side by side watching the dark water. "You should not be here anymore," Gabriel finally said. Chloe glanced toward him. A faint smile appeared. "It is." She looked back toward the bay. "You think I am in danger. I know you are." His answer came too quickly to argue with. Chloe wrapped both hands around the warm coffee cup. "Because I helped Sophia?" Gabriel shook his head. "Because whoever planned this knows you matter now." The words lingered longer than either of them expected. Chloe felt her heartbeat quicken slightly. Before she could answer, a security specialist stepped onto the balcony. His expression was serious. "Sir, we found another connection." Gabriel immediately followed him inside. Chloe hesitated only briefly before doing the same. Minutes later, she stood inside a private conference room as information appeared across multiple screens: names, access logs, schedules, financial records. Every new detail pointed toward a shrinking group of suspects. One particular pattern caught Chloe's attention. Several route changes involving Sophia had been approved through the same office, the same executive department, the same chain of communication. "That cannot be a coincidence," she said quietly. Every head in the room turned toward her. Gabriel studied the screen again, then nodded slowly. "No." The room fell silent. One of the analysts enlarged a timeline. Chloe leaned forward. The dates lined up perfectly with the missing money, the altered schedules, the surveillance gaps, everything connected, not to a stranger. To someone with deep access, someone trusted. Across the room, another analyst spoke. "There is more." New footage appeared. Grainy security video from a private parking structure. A familiar executive entering a vehicle. A second person waiting nearby. Faces were difficult to identify, but one thing stood out of documents. Then both individuals disappearing in separate directions. "When was this recorded?" Gabriel asked. 3 weeks ago." Nobody spoke. 3 weeks earlier, the investigation had not even begun. The planning had been underway long before the fair, long before Sophia disappeared. Chloe suddenly understood something that nobody else seemed willing to say aloud. This was never only about money. Several people looked toward her. Gabriel remained silent, encouraging her to continue. "If someone stole millions, they could have disappeared already," she said, "but they stayed." She pointed toward the timeline. "They kept taking risks." Another silence followed. Then Gabriel nodded once. "Because," the realization shifted the room. The missing funds had financed something larger, something that required leverage, something that required Sophia. Later that night, after hours of analysis and discussion, Chloe found herself walking through the estate gardens alone. Lanterns illuminated winding stone paths between hedges and flower beds. The cool air helped clear her thoughts. She was halfway to the fountain when she heard footsteps approaching behind her. She turned. One of the senior executives from lunch stood several yards away, friendly smile, expensive suit, calm demeanor. "Quite a week," he said casually. Chloe nodded politely. Something felt off. Not threatening, just strange. The conversation lasted less than 2 minutes. Small talk, nothing important. Yet when he finally walked away, Chloe noticed something unusual. His smile disappeared the instant he believed she was no longer looking. Hours later, inside the security center, analysts continued reviewing footage from across the estate. One camera captured the same executive leaving the gardens. Another showed him entering a private office. A third recorded him making a phone call from a secure line he was not authorized to use. The analyst stared at the screen, then immediately reached for the phone, because for the first time since the investigation began, suspicion was no longer spread across a room full of people. It was beginning to focus on one specific name. The truth rarely arrives all at once. It arrives in fragments, each piece making the next impossible to ignore. The following morning began before sunrise. A cold fog rolled in from the bay, covering the estate in a blanket of grey. Chloe stood near a tall window inside the main house, watching faint lights move through the mist outside. Security teams had been active all night. Phones rang constantly. Doors opened and closed. Conversations stopped whenever someone unfamiliar entered the room. The atmosphere had changed. Nobody was pretending everything was normal anymore. Somewhere within the organization, a trusted insider had betrayed the people around him, and now the evidence was becoming impossible to dismiss. Sophia sat at the breakfast table drawing pictures while pretending not to listen. Gabriel reviewed reports beside her. His coffee had gone untouched for nearly an hour. Every few minutes another file arrived, another timeline, another financial record. Chloe noticed the pattern. The closer they came to the truth, the quieter Gabriel became. Shortly after 8 o'clock, the lead analyst entered the room carrying a folder. Nobody spoke as he placed it on the table. Gabriel opened it slowly. Several photographs, several communication logs. He studied each one carefully. Then he looked up. "Are you certain?" The analyst nodded. "We verified everything twice." Silence followed. Chloe felt her stomach tighten. Gabriel slid one photograph across the table. She recognized the face immediately. The executive from the garden. The same man she had spoken with the previous evening. Calm smile, perfect manners. Trusted member of the organization for nearly a decade. "His name is Richard Hale," Gabriel said quietly. "Chief Financial Manager." Chloe stared at the photograph. "He was the one moving the money?" "Yes." Gabriel's voice remained calm, but something colder lived beneath it now. "And he approved several route changes involving Sophia over the last year." Another analyst placed additional documents on the table: communication records, offshore accounts, hidden transfers. Every road seemed to lead back to the same person. The evidence painted a picture nobody wanted to see. Richard had not acted impulsively. He had planned everything carefully, for months, maybe longer. "Why?" Chloe asked. Gabriel looked down at the reports. "Because he believed he deserved more than loyalty could offer." The answer sounded almost disappointed. Not angry, disappointed, as though betrayal from a stranger would have been easier to accept than betrayal from someone trusted. Less than 20 miles away, Richard Hale sat alone inside a private office overlooking the harbor. The blinds remained closed. Several bags rested near the door. His passport sat on the desk beside an open laptop. Escape plans, backup routes, financial accounts spread across multiple countries. He had prepared for many outcomes. Unfortunately for him, he had underestimated one thing: how quickly the truth could catch up. Back at the estate, another report arrived. This one carried the final piece. Security footage from a private garage recorded several weeks before the fair. Richard meeting with intermediaries connected to the operation. No speculation remained, no uncertainty. The chain was complete. Chloe watched as Gabriel studied the footage. For several long seconds, nobody moved. Then Gabriel closed the laptop, set up the meeting. The room immediately became still. One of the advisors looked surprised. "You want to speak with him directly?" Gabriel nodded once. "He has been hiding behind messages and middlemen for months." His gaze remained fixed on the table. "That ends today." The advisors exchanged nervous glances. Chloe understood why. The mystery that had dominated every conversation was finally solved. The missing money, the leak, the route changes, the operation involving Sophia, all of it traced back to one trusted executive who had chosen greed over loyalty. Yet the answers created a new question. What happened next? Later that afternoon, Sophia found Chloe in the garden near the fountain. The little girl carried a sketchbook beneath one arm. "Everybody looks worried," she said quietly. Chloe crouched beside her. "Some problems take time to fix." Sophia looked toward the main house. "Dad is going to leave, is he not?" Chloe followed her gaze. Through the distant windows she could see people preparing for something important, something final. "Maybe," she admitted. Sophia lowered her eyes. "He always leaves when things get complicated." Before Chloe could answer, a black vehicle rolled through the front gates. Then another stage had begun. Inside the house, Gabriel received a message and read it only once. The meeting location had been confirmed. Richard Hale was finally willing to talk, and by sunset, both men would come face to face for the first time since the betrayal was exposed. Some endings begin with a conversation that should have happened months earlier. Sunset painted the harbor in shades of copper and gold as Gabriel's convoy arrived at the agreed location. The meeting place was not dramatic, no abandoned warehouse, no hidden bunker, just a private office overlooking the water, the kind of place where important financial deals happened every day without attracting attention. Chloe remained at the estate with Sophia, but the entire evening seemed suspended by the same question. Why had Richard Hale risked everything? Inside the harbor office, floor-to-ceiling windows reflected the fading sunlight across polished wood and glass. Richard stood alone near the conference table when Gabriel entered. He looked older than his photographs, more tired, more fragile. The confidence he once carried had been replaced by something closer to resignation. Neither man spoke immediately. Years of trust sat between them like an invisible third person. Finally Richard exhaled. I wondered how long it would take. Gabriel remained standing. Richard nodded slowly. The silence stretched. Outside, boats drifted through calm water. Inside, the truth finally began to surface. The money was real, Richard admitted. Every transfer, every account. Gabriel said nothing. Richard looked toward the harbor. At just numbers moving from one place to another, a bitter smile crossed his face. That is how people justify bad decisions. They tell themselves they will fix everything later. Gabriel's expression never changed, and Sophia. Richard closed his eyes briefly. That was never supposed to happen the way it did. For the first time, genuine regret entered his voice. The original plan was leverage, nothing more. Gabriel stepped closer. Leverage against whom? Richard laughed softly, but there was no humor in it. Against you. The room fell quiet. Richard finally explained everything. The missing money had financed debts, failed investments, desperation hidden behind years of professional success. When the losses became impossible to conceal, he convinced himself there was only one way out. Force Gabriel into a financial agreement. Use pressure, use fear, use the one thing Gabriel valued above everything else. Sophia. The plan had spiraled beyond his control long before the fair. By the time he realized how dangerous it had become, too many people were involved. Too much money had moved. Too many lies had been told. You had 10 years of loyalty, Gabriel said quietly. Richard looked down. That is what makes this worse. Another long silence followed. Neither man raised his voice, neither needed to. The truth carried enough weight on its own. Back at the estate, Chloe sat on the back porch with Sophia wrapped in a blanket beside her. The bay stretched into darkness beyond the gardens. Crickets chirped softly among the trees. For the first time in days, the little girl seemed peaceful. "Do you think he is okay?" Sophia asked. Chloe knew exactly who she meant. "Yes." Sophia leaned her head against Chloe's shoulder. "He worries too much." Chloe smiled. "That sounds familiar," the child laughed quietly. Hours later, headlights appeared along the estate driveway. The convoy returned. Chloe stood as the vehicles rolled to a stop. Gabriel stepped out first, exhausted, relieved, finished. Whatever happened at the harbor had brought closure. He crossed the courtyard toward them. Sophia ran to him immediately. This time the reunion felt different. Not desperate, not frightened, safe. Gabriel held her tightly before looking toward Chloe. For several seconds neither spoke. Words seemed unnecessary. The mystery was over. The missing money had been traced. The betrayal had been exposed. The reason behind everything had finally been revealed. Yet as Gabriel looked between Sophia and Chloe, another realization settled quietly into place. The most important thing he almost lost had never been the money. It had never been the organization. It had been the people standing in front of him. and for the first time since the nightmare began, he allowed himself to believe they might finally have their future back. 1 year can change a life. Sometimes it can change 3. The Atlantic Ocean stretched endlessly beneath a bright Rhode Island sky. Waves rolled gently toward the shore in long ribbons of white foam. Seagulls drifted overhead. Children laughed somewhere farther down the beach. The morning carried the kind of peace that felt impossible to imagine 12 months earlier. Chloe walked barefoot across the sand, carrying a pair of shoes in one hand. The breeze lifted strands of hair across her face as sunlight reflected off the water. Ahead of her, Sophia raced toward the shoreline, laughing as the cold surf chased her feet. Every few seconds she turned around to make sure the adults behind her were watching. They always were. "You are supposed to be supervising her," Chloe called. Gabriel looked up from the beach chair beside her and raised an eyebrow. "I am supervising." Chloe laughed. "From 50 feet away? That is not the same thing." The exchange felt easy now, natural, the kind of conversation that no longer required effort. A year earlier they had been strangers. A frightened counselor and a missing child connected by one impossible night. Now they moved through each other's lives as though they had always been there. Sophia ran back carrying a collection of seashells. She dropped them dramatically into Chloe's hands. Chloe examined the shell carefully. "I think you might be right." Sophia smiled proudly before racing back toward the water. Gabriel watched her go. The expression on his face was familiar now, protective, grateful, peaceful. Most importantly, peaceful. The investigations had ended months ago. The stolen money had been recovered. Richard Hale had faced the consequences of his choices. The organization had survived. More importantly, it had changed. Gabriel had spent the year restructuring responsibilities, removing layers of secrecy and rebuilding trust. The process had not been easy, but for the first time in a long time his world no longer revolved around fear of losing everything. Chloe sat beside him on the sand. For a while the ocean provided all the conversation either of them needed. Finally Gabriel broke the silence. "Do you remember the church?" Chloe smiled. "The basement? You looked like you were deciding whether to trust a very bad idea, because it was a very bad idea." Gabriel laughed softly. "Fair." The sound carried easily across the wind. Chloe looked toward Sophia playing near the shoreline. "She is different now." Gabriel followed her gaze. "So am I." The honesty surprised neither of them. A year earlier, Gabriel had measured safety through control. More security, more surveillance, more preparation. Then a stranger had protected his daughter without asking for anything in return. Protection was not ownership. Trust was not weakness. Family was not something money could buy. Chloe reached down and picked up a smooth stone from the sand. "You know," she said, "most people would never believe this story." Gabriel smiled. "Good. Why?" He looked toward the horizon. "Because the best parts sound impossible." For a moment neither spoke. Waves rolled across the shoreline. Sunlight danced across the water. Sophia's laughter echoed through the sea breeze. Then the little girl came running back toward them once more. This time she stopped directly in front of Gabriel and placed her hands on her hips. "Are we still doing dinner tonight?" Gabriel nodded. "Of course." "Good." Sophia turned toward Chloe. "You are coming too." Chloe smiled. Was that ever in question? Sophia grinned triumphantly. No. Then she ran back toward the ocean. Gabriel watched her disappear toward the surf before looking at Chloe. There were 1,000 things he could have said. 1,000 ways to describe what she had become to both of them. Instead, he chose the simplest truth. "Thank you." Chloe shook her head gently. "For what?" Gabriel looked toward the beach, the waves, and the child neither of them could imagine life without any more. "For becoming family." The wind carried the words away across the shoreline. Neither of them needed to say anything else. Far out across the Atlantic, sunlight shimmered on the water like liquid gold. Behind them stretched a future neither had planned. Ahead of them ran a little girl, laughing freely beneath an open sky. 1 year earlier she had hidden beneath darkness while strangers searched for her. Now she ran toward the ocean without fear. And standing behind her were the two people who would always make sure she could.